I'll send out some of the pictures of Jim was like decked out. But tell them about just the people who would just come up to us to tell these stories.
Yeah, like I mean, when I said a divine timing, it was that the fact that we landed at this group of people that were sound up fans of a pod, that are linked to Alan Light, that are linked to Mark Goodman. They're the people that are running the podcast. And then you had this other Facebook group called Volume Maniacs. We just hit the jackpot. That's what it felt like. But in amongst that, because we hung out with them, all of them were INXS fans. And we all asked them, would you be okay if you said a couple of words about INXS? They all waited. There were people waiting around because we were just talking to everybody. And that's what it's about, creating that energy. And so wherever we went, even in the garage room, or the garage location, more INXS fans sharing their stories about the swing and what you need, whatever they were sharing. So if I'm in your home talking about a band that's not being inducted, and you've got a 1984 room that you mentioned INXS, and we know that their big space was 85, 86, etc. You'd be keen to know how can we have these guys in, and they're so relevant considering that these other bands are in. So I think I'm going to go with what John said. I think we've moved the needle a little bit, and we just got to keep promoting that. Keep promoting footage in the Rock Hall. Yes. Keep promoting the Rock Hall. They'll be happy with that because it's promoting more people to go to the Rock Hall anyway.
Well, and it's interesting because the people, almost everyone we talked to, when MTV came out, right, it was a platform that essentially changed the way youth consumed music. And the example we were using, Duran Duran and INXS are two bands that you saw them first, right? You saw, Mark Goodman and the other five VJs introducing these bands, and you'd see them and you'd see, the Rio video, and you're like, oh, who are these guys? And you'd see, the one thing, and all the, throwing of the food, and, don't change, they're on the back of the truck. And you're like, who are these guys? I gotta go buy these albums. The interesting thing is if you listen to, so they go back to John Sykes. John Sykes was one of the founders of MTV, and they were pitching MTV, and they were trying to get it, off the ground, and they had to prove that it was working. And John Sykes, I forget, I think it was maybe in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or something like that. They were going around the country to try to prove that it was working. And they went to a record shop, and they're like, hey, can you talk to us about? And these guys said, oh, we just sold 2 cases of Duran Duran. Like, that's not even playing on the radio. But these kids came in to buy it because they saw it on MTV. Well, that was INXS was the same thing. And in terms of the impact that INXS had through this video medium, that really resonated with people. People were like, oh, me too. I mean, we had the interviews with people that really, people agreed. Like, that was how they got introduced to INXS.
People were starting to watch music, not just listen to music.
That's right.
And there's a great doco out at the moment. Some of you guys may have seen it. It's done by a fantastic guy called Bill Simmons called Yacht Rock. And it's streaming on a lot of the platforms around the world, and it's interviewing a lot of the bands from 76 to 83 who sonically sounded pretty good, but visually they weren't the cutest looking rock stars in the world. And when MTV came along, it sort of knocked them off their perch a little bit,
Yes.
Video killed the radio star.
Correct.
And here's a really interesting fact. INXS is the one thing is 1982, yeah? It was 84, and they broke top 40. What 38 they were? What the charts were. But it was Duran Duran and U2 mentioned in that 1984 room that they broke video in 1984, 2 years later. It's really fascinating, right? But they ranked 39 and 40 was, and even Bon Jovi broke that year. So you've already got INXS 2 years prior using this medium, which John really brought to my attention. It's like, hang on, they're part of that video culture. You saw INXS, not hear INXS.
I think the thing that is frustrating, and I don't want this podcast to be about my frustration, but there needs to be, I think, as a solution, and probably John being the measured one here, there probably needs to, as I said, be some sort of active cheerleader that is sort of campaigning behind the scenes, because these things don't just happen by sort of accident in the end. There is a sort of a process and a lobbying. And look, we're in award season at the moment with the Academy Awards and things. And I remember as a kid, you never really used to hear about ballots and voting and anything. You just watched the awards, and this award won Best Film, and it was quite a simple sort of time. The Academy Awards now are all based upon artists lobbying, movie companies propping up movies, category fraud. Okay, this guy should be a supporting actor versus this actor. It's such a juggernaut of an industry that gets people to these award sessions. And unfortunately, I don't know if INXS and behind the scenes, their record company and everything there are playing the game, because it can't just be an external effort by everybody else or other artists. It has to be, I think, an internal push. And one thing that has allowed bands like the Go-Go's to get in and some others is they've had something that's relevant post their career. So the Go-Go's are not around anymore. And INXS, at the end of the day, aren't touring, aren't recording. They have a name and a brand, whatever, but they're not an active force. So the Go-Go's had a great documentary that came out that really spearheaded them getting in. And that was sort of a massive thing. You had Tina Turner, with the musical and different things like that, come around that sort of helped her cause. And I just think that, there needs to be probably something from management, which maybe there is in the works, I don't know, but there probably needs something that could create a story. Like, we think of the mini-series, that would have been a great opportunity, but somehow they didn't distribute it right in America, and America didn't quite stream it. And maybe it was a fraction early for streaming like it is now. I mean, maybe they were 2 years too early when streaming in 2014 wasn't what it is now. But something like, imagine if that miniseries came out now and had a global push. Wouldn't that been a great juggernaut or a momentum starter?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Hayden. I think that's true. I think INXS has got something that we don't really maybe think about enough, which is the song "Never Tear Us Apart." I mean, it's about to be used again in a major feature film. So, and I think also as a fan group, that's part of our job is to just get
my qualm about everything is that, and you've actually hit on it almost in an exact way. David Wild, who I think, John, you're probably aware of, and being an American, and also Jim, etc., being an ex-Rolling Stone, editor and writer, and I think he does liner notes for Bowie's greatest hits and everything. He's a fantastic music journo. But one thing he said, and I heard him on a podcast, it is about INXS, he says, the thing that people don't always recognise about them is their sheer catalogue size. And I think one thing that that probably is understated in this whole thing is that they have 18 top 100 hits in America.
Yep.
Alone in America. But in Australia, they have about 50, and in England, they have about 20. The song catalogues is probably their greatest asset because Michael's not around. And the rest of the band were a little bit vanilla on a marketing level, okay? Not on our level or the skill level, but they didn't have an edge to a Bono. They didn't have a Keith to a Mick. They didn't have the sort of that second sort of semi-superstar who would do press. Andrew was very shy. Ironically now Andrew's not shy.
Right, amazing.
He loves his social media, but it's a sign of the times. But having that second sort of superstar in the band to sort of champion the cause, I mean,
and can keep continuing.
AC/DC lost their singer, lost their second singer, lost their third singer. They still had Angus. So having someone out there sort of trump up sort of the messaging, etc. there and whatever is always handy. But INXS's greatest asset is the depth of the material and how many songs get played on US radio. Some of the bands have been inducted, like the Pretenders, have had less than 5 top 40 hits. And I find it bizarre, in the sense of just their voting. Now, again, I'm going on a rant that I don't want to go on a rant, but I'm trying to come up with a solution and say, well, what is one of their greatest strengths that can help spearhead things? Well, as you just
Joe Gonzalez mentioned that on when we did the interview, that they, it's not like 1 or 2, like have a dozen songs that are still actively played. Yeah. And that's not the norm, right? That's a great legacy. And it's current. I mean, the songs have stood the test of time, much more so than a lot of their peers back in that.
So there's a push to get the B-52s in, and look, I've been around long enough to remember the B-52s when they started. But cultural zeitgeist, they have about 4 songs people know. Now others deep dive members or fans would know more of them, but there are artists being inducted in with, like with Peter Frampton. he had such a massive live album and history presence, but he probably has 2 songs that get played on mainstream US radio. So it's just interesting, just the other mechanisms as to why others get inducted and learning from it.
And when you think about that, right? So, and I know we talked about this, and I think it was up on your socials about this time last year. I mean, there's 43 different INXS songs that have been covered by other artists. And speaking of other artists, there's over 250 artists that have covered INXS. So when you think about the influence, right? And the greatest way to flatter someone is to imitate them. And that's just the fact when you look at the catalog and you look at the number of artists that have taken the time to record INXS's music. That's a beautiful thing, and it's testament to what you're saying.
I think it just seems that there are other aspects that do get you in, and one of the things that on Nick Bombatch's podcast that I listen to, they do this ballot where they have five picks per person. They go around, etc. There, and I think
the draft.
The draft. I think Greg, picked INXS on his 5th pick, and that was the they couldn't
second year in a row.
Yeah, they couldn't repeat themselves. But the thing that just sort of does my head in a little bit is just all this stuff. Well, she's been a great spearhead for LGBTQ, or this one will really attract the black vote, and they really take their messaging away from what the actual art of music was, and they make it cause related as opposed to achievement related. And I know. Again, some of these committees, they like to attach themselves to causes and, cultural zeitgeist moments and things. But I think INXS music is so prolific, but they themselves, they're a bit anonymous. How many people do you go, I didn't know that was an INXS song. Oh, that's an interesting one. I didn't know that was INXS. They're almost a victim of their own anonymity, but sheer prolificness.
Yeah, well, but isn't this an opportunity for fans to step up and say something about it? We don't have maybe some of the assets that other bands have that have got in, but we have a catalog that is so deep. And to me, that you're just telling me something that makes me feel challenged. I want to get out there and say more.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think what's frustrating, for me, sorry to interrupt, but what's frustrating for me, like B and I doing Facebook, we see all these pages that'll have a picture of INXS or Michael Hutchence, and you guys should read the comments underneath. I mean, it's, this was the best concert of my life. Michael Hutchence was this, and INXS was that. I mean, I go through pages and pages and pages, and then, John on the Rock Hall fan thing, somebody puts a picture of INXS up, and it's just amazing to me and frustrating to me, the amount of comments that people have about, I love this band, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. I know that if they were to get nominated, I know people deep down would be like, holy shit, INXS isn't nominated ever? And they would, I really, really think that we're not giving credit to maybe people's memories of INXS until they're brought to the forefront.
Well, this is the point, and why that's exactly being said is they've become an afterthought of nostalgia, going, oh yeah, they were really good. Yeah, what actually happened to them? And what it means is that they haven't been able to, particularly in America, where a lot of these, I mean, obviously the Hall's there, and it is a very American-centric sort of organisation, but they haven't been able to sort of keep a relevance or in the limelight or whatever there for various reasons, and we've probably talked about them over the podcast's history. But I think, as you said before, Kathy, having a song like in Baby Girl with Nicole Kidman's movie coming out, again, probably won't be a mainstream sort of thing, but having, Need You Tonight.
I don't know. She was nominated. I think people will be watching that.
No, but it won't be a $100 million movie. It won't be like Stranger Things with Kate Bush, you know what I mean? But it's still...
It's getting a lot of PR over here, so...
Yeah.
But something along the lines of attaching certain... I mean, like Dua Lipa, for example, she sampled, Need You Tonight, one of her songs and things.
She would be good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it wasn't the biggest single off the album. Again, little, it was still popular. But, I think just maybe management needs to sort of have something they're doing as part of the process and things like that. And they would probably say, well, we're doing this, this, and this, but it probably just needs to be... I think the band, just what's missing in their canon, really, is a great documentary Warts and All, 2-hour documentary from 1977 to 2012, whatever. That really dives deep and talks to everyone from Chris Thomas, talks to people like Bono, talks to people like Bruce Springsteen, who covered their song, talks to people.
Bon Jovi.
Talks to people who don't use hairdryers. But just the Warts and All deep dive sort of doco. Because the miniseries is drama, it's a dramedy, I think the band don't have something there, and particularly while the band are alive to tell their story, I think that would be great.
Yeah. It's a shame it wasn't pieced together, that miniseries, so it would be made into a little bit of a mini movie. That would be good. I was listening to some news the other day, and they were saying that a lot of musicians aren't actually getting into festivals because they don't have an online presence. I think that's also feeding through to this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing as well. If you haven't got much of an online presence, as maybe that might be another key figure of why you're not getting nominated. Would you agree?
Well, I saw something yesterday about that, though. There was it might have been the girl in the project, Miff Warhurst.
It was.
Is that what you saw? Yeah,
I've heard it 2 or 3 times, and it was on the project last night.
Essentially saying that there are a lot of bands who aren't getting booked for big gigs now because they don't have a big social media presence or whatever. Yet the bands who have a social media presence can't play live. So
yes,
there's a bit of an irony there. But look, I think there's just what you're saying, B. It's another lever that could be pulled.
Yes.
Documentaries,
But INXS is being a lot more active themselves, aren't they? They're always posting now a fair bit.
Well, their website's more functional now, but it's operating at a level it should have from a long time ago. But
I mean, if you look at when we started this stuff, which is over 5 years ago, and look at where it is now, like there's just an awareness. Like I really believe we've moved the needle. Something shifted. Really believe that.
30 people in that room at all, not personally, but do you know how many of them are actual artists? How many of them are sort of, journos type people? Do you know the split, or have you got a bit of an idea of who's on that?
I don't have the exact split, but in terms of artists, you've got Dave Grohl, you've got Daryl McDaniels, you've got Jimmy Jam is now on it, Sheryl Crow is now on it, Tom Morello, Questlove, Stevie Van Zandt. So those are all the performers. I know there's a number of writers who are on it, and then you've got the John Sykes, Rick Krim, who is now the chairman. He's a MTV VH1 guy as well. So I think there's quite the sampling across different backgrounds. But there are a number.
I know there are people who vote in general, but someone like Nile Rodgers votes, but he's probably not in that room, is he?
Yeah, so so he's not on the nominating committee. There's 30 people on the nominating committee.
Yeah.
When they go through their thing, they come up with, let's say, 16, 17 people who are nominated. That will go to the voting body. The voting body is 1,000 plus people who have either been they've been named voters, or they've actually already gotten in. So every artist that's in, they all have a vote. I believe anyone who has presented has a vote. So they are the voting body that ends up winnowing the 16 down to the, hey, it's these 8 performers. And then there are other, I call them subcommittees or other categories, where there's kind of smaller groups, and they'll induct other artists that aren't in the performer in the performer category.
Retrospectives of some artists from the 50s, but then the first official ceremony, I think Jagger inducted the Beatles, and the Beach Boys got inducted the same night. There wasn't all this dramatic sort of lobbying, was it? I think it was a simpler time when they were good, they deserved to be in.
Yeah.
And there's something about not complicating the process, although we are where we are now.
Jim,
we should go through that list together, and just maybe that's a really good point, Hayden. Like break down that list and go in this, whoever is in this nominating committee, who is an artist, who does what, and just find some, again, common themes. I like that.
Danielle, you had something to say then.
I don't know. I was just thinking, talking about, artists inducting and stuff. With Andrew recently being in Nashville, as John and Sheila and Chuck and I saw, the performance that he had, it was basically for like industry people in Nashville. And with Keith Urban coming out at the Grand Ole Opry, cool. You guys don't really realize what a big deal that is here in the United States. So I feel like with Andrew kind of going on this country journey, and being in Nashville, I almost feel like he's hitting the right people.
Yeah.
Maybe at the right time in a weird sort of way.
I think it's a great point. And he's the most active, probably, keep the band in neon lights advocate going around at the moment.
Yeah. And, obviously we were the, big INXS fans there. And it was so funny because he kept, when he was talking, he was like, and I used to be in this band and it was called INXS. And I had a partner and his name was Michael Hutchins. And it was just so cute because we're like looking at each other going, well, yeah, we know who it was. But I feel like internally with Andrew going on this country journey, bringing his music to a different artist group, there are artists, country, musicians and writers that they cross over to rock. I think it's just the right, we've all been talking about the right timing. And I think Andrew's kind of getting in there with the right people.
And having dinner with Dolly.
I think it does come back to, it starts with the people, 30 people in this nominating committee. Someone on that committee needs to be reminded or influenced of the band. And I don't think anybody has any doubt that, once you remind people of just how big they were and how long they, how long they lasted, and how deep their catalog is. And they got 75, million records sold, what'd you say, 12, 18, top hits, record, a number of, gold, platinum, multi-platinum records across the globe, hundreds of them. When you remind people of that, and you remind people of the fact that, in 88, they played a 65,000 Texas Stadium show where Guns N' Roses opened for them.
That's crazy.
And it reminds people of just how big this band was.
I think
that those reminders that need to be out there, and it starts with someone on that nominating committee has got to be reminded enough to say, what, they're going to be one of our two. And then I think that what people have said here, once that's kind of out there, people go, oh yeah, they're not. Then it's going to kind of snowball from there.
Yeah.
And so I love our discussion. Jim and I had with Joe. And, he's like, guys, I don't know if anyone's told you. And he goes like, and I'm, not, on the nominating committee, but they are too big to not get in. They're going to get in. It's just a matter of when.
When he said that, it gave me a little chill, John. When he said that, it gave me a little chill. I was down the beach. I was listening to it, and then I just did the fist in the air like Judd Nelson in the Breakfast Club at the end. I got a little chill moment. And the only thing I was going to, just add was the greatest chance they've got of getting in is the fact that they love to, in this American formatting, particularly in radio and in this awards, they're at this point where they love to categorize. They've got our new wave artists, we've got our classic rock artists, we've got our rap person, we've got our songstress, our singer-songwriter, and they are in heavy rock, goth, alternative metal, whatever it is. Every year now, they're seemingly putting in categorizations of 6 or 7 genres, and they are hitting that MTV era. So, that's probably the thing that's going to be in their favor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when you think about the artists at that time who haven't gotten in, it's Cyndi Lauper, it's Billy Idol, New Order, and I think they're lumping together Joy Division and New Order, INXS. Yeah. But those are the kind of the big ones. The Smiths probably are in there, but there's not. It's not like the list is huge. There's a couple of big artists, and I think all those names probably eventually should get in.
Mm-hmm. Look, if Frankie goes to Hollywood, gets in first, I'm going to retire.
Okay? One song.
Relax, Hayden. Relax.
So this stand-up podcast, should we be lobbied to get onto having a little part with them, get an interview with them?
I don't know if they bring people onto the podcast similar to how Joe does. Although Joe doesn't do it a lot. I think we were very fortunate that he was able to talk to us and specifically about INXS. I think Sound Up is a little different in that, you know, I don't think Alan, like, he's on the nominating committee. I think he's very, you know, he's probably a little leery of, you know, being, you know, influenced, you know,
100%. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I don't know if that, but I do think that for your listener group and fans of INXS, right? If our mission is to get them, you know, nominated into the Rock Hall and essentially, you know, achieve this lifetime achievement award, which is exactly what it is, I do think that there's a lot to be learned by listening to Sound Up. And Alan, and they talk a lot about the process. Listen to this Who Cares About the Rock Hall podcast, because they talk about how it all works. And I think it's important for us as a community to understand that, because we all have the same goal. None of us really know exactly how it's going to work, what's going to be the influencing thing. But the more we kind of educate ourselves on all this stuff, I'd like to think the better chances we have of getting someone, reminding someone on this committee just how awesome they were, and get them acknowledged.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for my shirt as well.
I might call that your final thought, John. That's a very eloquent way of putting it. Kathy, any final thoughts for you and anything you'd like to share?
Well, I'd remind everyone to say that this is a process. If it's not this year, it's next year. Like, just keep on it. And when we get the results of this year, let's take it with grace. It's not a snub. From what I can see, the Rock Hall looks at that. They know they can't admit everyone every year. So don't take it personally. Just move on to the next year. And let's keep the pressure on and keep talking about how this band needs to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And Melbourne misses you from a year ago.
Wow.
You know, it's tennis on, and I wish I was there.
I was having flashbacks about a year ago. You were doing your tennis thing. So, yeah, it's all about to kick off.
I was there this time last year. Oh.
All right.
Hey, isn't Danielle about to be in Australia?
Yes.
I am.
Yeah.
Oh, when do you go?
I will be in Australia on Tuesday, May 6th through Wednesday, May 14th.
Oh,
Y'all
cool,
come
cool.
see me.
And Danielle's
Love it,
excited.
love it.
She pictured the ticket booking yesterday and sent it to me. So I'm going to drag your butt down to Melbourne, even if you don't want to come. I'm going to drag you here.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for you, Dr. Jim?
Oh, yeah. I just think, you know, what Kathy said, you know, like, once we're here, you know, if we don't make it this year, and to sort of reiterate the words of Ellen Light, like, we're going to keep fighting the fight. I believe we've moved the needle from the point of view of just being present and really getting the vibe of being the Rock Hall. Something really exciting that Greg Harris is now doing is that and John's mentioned it, and I saw the actual interview that the Rock Hall ceremonies will now be every 2 years in Cleveland. And I dare say maybe in the future with a bigger Rock Hall museum, maybe even every year, because it's just growing. There's a growing energy in that hall. So, yeah,
I think it's better than having every 3 years there. Like, if they're going to alternate LA and New York, just to have that every second year at the main home ground, you know?
yes.
Danielle, any final thoughts for you?
I'm gonna go with what everybody else is saying. You know, I feel like we have moved the needle. Just even this podcast being around has helped.
Yep.
I actually remember Dr. Jim back in, like, before this podcast was even there, of signing for INXS to be inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame. I think there's enough of us out there, an INXS army, as you will, that we will get them there. Like everybody's saying, it may not be this year, may not be next year, but we will get them there. And we will let the world know what INXS is, who INXS was, and who INXS will always be.
Now, B, a final thought from you, but I thought I might throw it to you to then elaborate on. Could you imagine recording and setting up our production at the Rock Hall of Fame on the day of the induction? Wouldn't that be pretty cool?
I think that will be a said. We will be doing that. We will be there. We will be in the garage, and we will be in the museum, and we will be everywhere. But my thoughts are, thank you everybody for all coming on today and all your contributions, and to all the people that are outside this little box here as well, all the people that comment, all the people that share, all the people that post, all the people that have like Facebook pages that they run. It's all going to contribute to getting awareness and INXS into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You're all going to be doing your bit, and thank you to each one of you here as well. And Hayden, over to you. You a massive
No, well, that's again, thank everyone for coming on
this.
board. I think it's the key to the takeaway I'm sort of remind myself today is that there's just so many levers that can be pulled, and I think that you know, everyone here is doing their bit. It seems like, you know, Andrew Farris is doing his bit. You know, the Induct INXS team are doing their bit. I think, you know, Facebook and social media and spreading awareness is doing their bit, and I'm sure management are doing their bit as well. But I think that you know, hopefully it's just a case of sooner than later.
Oh, I know it's a figure, but you know, we reached over 3 million views over the Christmas period. That's huge.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
actually,
It's
it's
huge.
3.6 million to be precise,
That's
which is
amazing.
like nearly 4 million.
Yeah, and being Hayden, what you guys have done creating this podcast, you know, is really just, you know, just that's a great, unbelievable tribute to the band, you know, and these 6 guys that you know, obviously have had a huge impact on all of our lives. But what you guys have done to get that word out and honor this band and create this fan community of all of us. Thank you, because it's just an unbelievable thing what you guys do. You know, Jim, what you're doing with your team on the Induct INXS side, trying to get people, you know, 18,000 people signing the signature. You know, Bede, Hayden, you know, getting, you know, what are we up to? Like, were you guys up to like 19, 20,000?
Nearly
Almost.
followers?
Almost. Yeah.
It's extraordinary what you guys do. You know, for this band that we all love and we all want to see honored. They deserve it.
Because I think that, and thank you for those lovely words. I think
Yeah.
what I've always been a big believer in life is that quality rises to the top, you know, and there's something missing if this doesn't happen. It just doesn't quite make sense. I'm sure it will be rectified, but just a little bit impatient.
Getting there. Nearly 5 years.
Yeah. Because they've been eligible since 2005, so it's a 20-year snub, in my opinion.
True.
But I mean, I've been 2 years with the podcast now, and it really is amazing how many people come forward now just and say, I really like INXS. So you know, you're doing your job and it's working. So just be patient. It'll happen soon.
All right. I try to tell myself that every day.
Hey, what will you do once they're in? So
retire the podcast. Let's go. Job done. Okay, we'll go. What do we do next? We'll go next. We'll go on to Crowded House or Midnight Oil. I don't know.
Yes.
Probably
would actually.
You'll keep spinning INXS stories. I know that.
Probably.
Yeah.
But look,
Crowded House need to be in there as well, though.
Yeah. Look, it's just as a funny one. When I get a little bit INXS nostalgic, I love putting on these YouTube these first reaction videos for people who are hearing INXS songs for the first time. I think I've promoted a fair bit in the news section, probably infinitum, but they are hilarious and they are great. And you're seeing a lot of people, particularly a lot of the black listeners, love it and they love the songs, but they can't pronounce the name. They go, "This is some band called INXS." IXS. They can't pronounce the name. But anytime they put on a What You Need or a Never Tear Us Apart and they're listening to this with their friend and they comes to the Kirk sax solo, you know, in Never Tear Us Apart, they're like, they do the ears. It is so funny. Like, you do yourself a favor. You ever feel like, you know, want to see the band hit a new audience? These are great watches on YouTube and things.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, let's call that a wrap. All right, then, guys. Take care.
See you guys. Ciao.
Bye.
This is the Dutchie, and you've been listening to INXS Access All Areas with Hayden and Bee.